So you've got a statement, and your statement. I love a big statement, and this is your big statement, by the way. So this isn't you lifting. You said, and I quote, "For most people, most of the time, a simple kettlebell swing is a better power movement than any Olympic lift derivative." First of all, I mean, I know that we have to say these things sometimes. It's a bit of clickbait. We're writing articles, and you've written a lot of articles. But do you stand by that?
Yeah, the article that was the clickbait for is referenced, is academically referenced, and does go into some studies that I think viewed together back that up fairly strongly.
Okay. So my question to you is, in terms of just breaking that down, is what do you mean by a power movement? And can you give me examples? So it says, and I don't know what really an Olympic lift derivative would be in terms of other training that anybody would do.
So in S&C land,
strength and conditioning, yeah.
Yes, in strength and conditioning world, strength and conditioning coaches, and this will upset everyone, justify their existence by teaching barbell back squats and power cleans. And
so a barbell back squat is sort of that sort of
compressive up on your back. You bend your knees and hips till your thighs are parallel to the floor, and you stand back up again.
Okay.
And loads held up high on your back, and you have to lift it out of a rack.
Right.
So they teach that, and they teach Olympic lift derivatives. So if you watch weightlifting in the Olympics, and that is where you have the barbell sat on the floor, and you might pick it up overhead in one movement, boom, pick it up to your shoulders,
clean and jerk.
So derivatives of those are where you have to move the bar fast enough to catch it, because for you to get it from the floor to either your shoulders or to overhead, you need to generate enough speed that the bar is floating for a period for you to then catch it again, because you can't express force to it as it sort of passes the point where you're over it to it's over you.
Okay,
that kind of makes sense. So Olympic lift derivatives have been massively publicized for their ability to help you generate maximum power. So that is recruitment of muscle fibers faster and sort of on demand, if you like. So if you're underneath the bar and you're doing max power work, because it's not a particularly fast lift, you have time to recruit more muscle fibers in theory. So when you hit a sticking point, you can then grind through that, which is your brain recruiting more fibers or rate coding for you, your brain recruiting fibers faster for you to pick up that weight.
Are we also saying, presumably, that something like a movement, a swinging movement, where you've got a resistance at the end, by the very nature of it, you're going to have a lot of variation in your movement? I've often concerns me about this idea of very sort of two-dimensional, unidirectional movement as far as weighting and loading is concerned. And for me personally, I would much rather have a lot more variation in movement. So do you think sort of translating it down into the everyday training person, that even a lighter kettlebell might be moving that around is very beneficial because it increases the range of movement?
Well, to me, there's a bit of a bell curve in that, like there is with many things, that if you go too far down one end where you're making the weight so light so you can do so many different complex movements with it, you're not training maximum recruitment.
Okay.
So you're not getting stronger. You're actually just moving about, which you might as well do with body weight or all different calisthenic movements, whatever else. But if you go down the far end, the other end of the curve, you get into this powerlifting type mentality, which again is big in S&C and is completely ridiculous. And it's what you're talking about, where you actually stabilize the movement so much that the strength you produce is not applicable anywhere else. Yeah. So this brings us around to the hypertrophy type thing, and it brings me around to thinking about things like mixed martial arts in the early days, where you had people carrying excessive muscle mass that they've produced in an excessively stabilized way, almost like bodybuilding, but actually they can't transmit that strength in any kind of usable way, where there are different planes of movement. They might be on one leg, the grip's limited. How you transfer that force limits the amount of the muscle mass that they've got they can use. So then you've got an additional amount of body weight. You've got a metabolically active tissue that requires oxygen to function, if you to take away the waste products if you've gone anaerobic. So it's a drain on you as a system, but it's actually useful.